They say that if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. So what are the metrics that we should be tracking in the land business? Sure, we can track revenue and profit, but what else? Numbers of properties bought and sold per month? Mix of cash versus terms? Performance numbers by county? What about marketing? Do you track which campaigns are successful and which ones aren't so you can optimize the things that work and the things that don't? In today's episode of the Land.MBA Podcast, Dave and I speak with Dave Denniston of Generation Family Properties. Dave is a financial expert and generously shares his wisdom on how to track the numbers in your business so you too can generate upwards of $35,000 a month in revenue.
Welcome to the Land.MBA Podcast, where we go deep into the business of land investing.
Hey, how's it going, folks? Dave Dennitson. Thank you for coming on the show. Finally got together with you, and we're glad to have you. And of course, we've got my partner in crime up there, Howard.
Howdy, folks.
Thank you guys for having me. This will be fun. Really get into the numbers.
I love it. I love it. Dave, you've been a LandSpeed customer for a long time now. And it's been really great getting to know you and watching you grow. And what I love about it is, we've had, we've covered a number of things over the course of, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it's been. And you are a detail guy. I mean, you get right in there, you figure out what needs to be done. You hone in on it, you make it happen. I've noticed that. I've had to react to that a few times, and it's been phenomenal. I've actually enjoyed it because I learn a lot from you too. So just having to serve you as a customer, I learn a lot.
Hopefully, I'm not too much of a pain in the rear. It's
all in a good way. All in a good way.
All ships with a rising tide, right?
Exactly.
So Dave, let's just kick this thing off and start kind of at the beginning, because I don't even know this. I mean, we maybe talked about it a long time ago, but I don't actually remember. How did you come into land?
So this will be a long story, and but I think there's a lot of great lessons along the way in this. So I'm 38 now.
To think about that.
Yeah, I do. You have to now, right? You guys can relate to that, I'm sure. But
we're older, so we have to think longer about it.
Wait, I'm 39. My bad, 39. And so
this is the numbers guy.
I know, right?
Yeah. The question is, how long will you be 39?
That's a good question. So I did my undergrad in finance back in Seattle Pacific University, which I was like the seventh person from my family to go to that college. And that's where I met my wife. And I started out in finance, and I did door knocking to try and obtain clients, which was very, very, very difficult and very, very humbling. I can't think of a thing to make you more humble than knocking on people's doors to try and to get them to give you some money. And so I got burned out of that. So I started out as an entrepreneur right out of college, but I quickly figured out I didn't have the skill set at that time to really be an entrepreneur. I didn't have the connections or necessarily the money to invest at that time. I ended up vacillating back and forth between wanting to be a firefighter versus continuing in finance. And I ended up continuing in finance and working for another firm. So I got to be salaried at this point in a small business. And so got to really see how things worked. We grew this company to 3 or 4 times, and I was an integral part of that. Certainly not the only cog in the wheel. And during that time, my great aunt passed away, and I inherited money. And so we had no debt. So I paid off our mortgage that we had on our house. We had a young daughter. I ended up, I had no car loans, no student loans. I was living that ideal kind of almost FIRE lifestyle. We're working into that where you just save, and have no debt, right? So you're very lean and mean. And I got to the point in the salary job where I was running the show. I was a huge asset to my boss. I was free for all my administrative work that I was doing, plus bring in additional income to him. And so I said, you know what? I can do this. And he was going through a divorce, and it was just kind of a rough time for him. And so I started looking for acquisitions because I had an inheritance to buy a business. And so I built up my confidence again, was like, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur. And so I went and made a literal $1 million acquisition, moved my family all the way from Seattle, which is where my wife was from, so her comfort zone, to Bloomington, Minnesota, where we knew nobody, literally starting over from scratch. And this was on August 1st, 2008.
Ooh.
We go to Greece, and in September, and Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, Washington Mutual goes bankrupt, all this bad stuff happening after I just made this huge acquisition. And I had taken out some family loans because I didn't have enough, even with the inheritance I had levered up our house, which we had no mortgage on. And so I took all this risk in this one transaction. Wow. And I was young at the time. So this was 12 years ago. So I was 27.
He is good with numbers.
And so I figured, hey, I have my whole career ahead of me. If this blows up on me, I could come back from this. But made it through sweat and tears, kind of renegotiate some of the acquisition stuff. But I was starting from scratch, basically. All that inheritance was sunk into this business. Plus, I had debt to family at that time. And I put money into marketing. I started learning about Dan Kennedy and various marketing people, and got into more the marketing game, and learning how to run a business. I didn't have to run the whole thing. I was basically paying rent, if you will, for kind of the space that I have with some of my partners. So I wasn't fully responsible for everything, but I was definitely had to learn, how do you get clients? What does that look like? Which I knew some of that, of course, from my prior experiences. And then my wife and I have our youngest daughter, and this little girl, she was our little miracle girl. She was born 23 weeks gestationally.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So out of 40 weeks, she was less than a pound. She was 12.4 ounces in size. This was 2012, so 8 years ago now. And she was due in September, came out on Mother's Day on May 13th. And so we were in the hospital in the NICU for about 4 or 5 months. Luckily, she had a long honeymoon period, but she was on a ventilator. Her skin, when she came out, was literally translucent. You could see the blood and the veins and all that stuff going through her. She literally fit, in my hand. She was that long. And so she gets bigger, gets a little better, but there's all kinds of issues going on. Nothing horrible that was life-threatening, except for the ventilator stuff that she had to get on. Didn't have brain hemorrhaging, didn't have a lot of things. So I feel very blessed that we didn't have some of those horrible things. And so I got to be really grateful to all of these doctors and nurses that we were around. And I had a few people that I worked with that were doctors. And so I really decided to specialize in physicians, because obviously physicians have money, when you think of finance and things like that, and they have the ability. And plus they have a lot of specific issues related to debt. And so I got really passionate about that segment. I started my podcast, The Freedom Formula for Physicians. And that's when I ran into Mark Podolsky, who came onto my podcast. And so ended up getting into land that way, as many folks have through one person or another. And what was so interesting as I got into land, I had all this marketing behind me, doing the podcast, running my business, knowing some of email lists and all these things that maybe my podcast or my books didn't sell hundreds of millions of copies, but it allowed me to, I think, have a head start versus other people in the land business, where I really understood kind of some of the basics. Not that I know the land business in and out, but I understood. What's that?
You understand business.
Yeah. Yeah. I did.
It's just a product.
That's right. And what was so exciting for me in my primary business that I acquired, it is so freaking hard to get clients. You have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to acquire a customer. And here I get into land, I send out some letters and people respond like, oh, okay. And then you sell it. And there was all of this interest. You know, I had these Facebook messages going on forever, people interested. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. People actually really want what I have. And so as I look at the differences between the two, land has been a blessing just in not that it's easy, but that the client acquisition process has been so much more fun, and seeing it happen, seeing the results happening has been a lot of fun for me. And that's the journey.
Wow. That is a great, now tell me how your daughter is now.
Yeah. So she's 8 years old today, and you know, she's doing amazingly well, all things considered. She's in second grade, so we kept her behind a little bit. She runs around. If you talk to her, you would have no idea that all this stuff happened. Although she does have some mental development stuff going on, and we're trying to get her caught up. But hey, we're blessed and lucky with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, that's wonderful news. What a great story. And you know, I've said it like 10 million times, but you know, for much of my career, I was extremely entrepreneurial, but I was not an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I did, you know, I created new products, I created teams, I put products in the marketplace, but I did it within larger companies. And the difference, I always say, the difference between being entrepreneurial and being an entrepreneur is the willingness to take risk. And, you know, and I wish I knew at a young age what you knew at a young age, which was that, because, you know, it's when you're young that you can do it, because like you said, you know, you got your whole life ahead of you, you got the energy, you've got, you know, your career in front of you, you could come back, and your responsibilities are so much less in your 20s than they are in your 40s or your 50s. It is the absolute time to just burn your ships at the shore. And hey, if I fail, you know, hey, it's America. I have a friend who was a phenomenal entrepreneur who I worked with years and years ago. And he was always trying to break me out of it, getting me to take more risk. And he would say, Howard, it's America. You can't starve in America.
Yes. Well, it's just amazing all the things we can do. We're so blessed.
Yeah.
So,
it is. And I think, didn't we do a podcast on that? I think being entrepreneurial versus being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think we did.
There's a big difference when you have to get out there and put your butt on the line and your family's depending on you, you know. I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago with my nephew, Mike, who's a great entrepreneur as well, and, you know, started real young. And so I think this is not to discourage older people from doing it. Hell, Howard and I are doing it. We started late, but it's, you certainly, especially, you know, before you have a family, I say, hey, kids, go for it. You know, work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, live in a trailer or your parents' basement. You can live on top ramen and tuna fish, and you got energy for days. You know, just go for it. And then, hey, if it fails, you can always try again, or you can still get a job.
And you know, I've experienced this over and over and over again in my life. Necessity is the mother of invention. And, you know, and I can only imagine how you were feeling when you got out there and the crash happened and you owed all this money to your family. And, you know, you probably had, you know, a fair amount of early onset heartburn, and you're saying, I have to make this work. I don't have an option. And it is such a driver, and it's like the whole world, and you get this incredible focus, both on what to do and how to do it. And they're just, there is no option, and it's tremendous. And then you can look back and say, I don't think I'd be so successful today if that hadn't happened the way it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what I'm setting myself up for the next 10 years, is that we're going to have huge amounts of financial freedom, be able to make a big difference in this world, which is one of the big drivers for me. We have big dreams. I think so many people talk about, gosh, I just want to replace my job. It's like, well, that's not that hard. Think bigger. Let's dream of the possibilities of what we can do. And that's where I'm at today. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily financially free to where all of our obligations are paid off and all of that, but I could shut off a bunch of stuff today and just start collecting income to pay off those things if I wanted to. But that's not where I'm at right now.
No, that's
yeah. I love that, part about thinking bigger, because, if you don't, I've been reviewing some of this stuff lately, if you don't set that bar high enough, then, you're aiming too low. It can also impact your motivation. You got to figure out what really gets you up in the morning, what gets your juices flowing to do the right things every day. And I think thinking bigger like that is so important.
Hey, what's our tagline? The tagline for Land.MBA.
Think big, start small, scale fast. Exactly. And you're so right. So many people don't, and I find myself in that. Well, I just want, when I wanted to quit my job, I just wanted to get enough income to leave my job. But that's a milestone in that plan. That's not the dream. Yeah.
Well, and the point I would make in a lot of cases, and I've seen this happen to a few people, where they set that bar and then they take the leap, but then things start going the wrong direction, and now the land business isn't enough to actually sustain their regular needs. Right. And that's why for me, I still have my day job. And this land business just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because I don't need that income. The second you start needing that income, as you guys do doing this full time, you're under a lot more pressure to have to perform, a lot more pressure, to find the best deals. Whereas for me, I don't have to cherry pick. I can pick good deals, great deals, all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead, Howard.
Full time if you wanted to in land?
Well, this is one of those interesting questions. So I'll just lay out the numbers in terms of where I'm at today. If you look at, I've done a lot of terms. So I know some people are more cash, some people are more terms. For me, when I look back on what I was talking about, that $1 million acquisition, the huge lesson that taught me was income diversification. And so that's why with my land business, I've done a lot of terms, and I love terms for that reason, because I don't have all of my eggs in a few baskets. I have them spread. Right now I have 207 notes, nice. 207 of them.
Nice.
A few folks are late. So I have about 10 people that are late. So let's call it about 5%. The current recurring revenue, assuming everyone pays on time, which of course people don't, but also assuming I don't get any cash deals, which I certainly do. Right now we have $37,000 a month of revenue. Now that's not net income, right? That's revenue.
Right.
If you subtract out property taxes and dues and some of my splits with other people, the net to me before my main business expenses, is $28,000 a month.
Fantastic.
Sounds like a lot, right? But let me make the case of why that's not necessarily as large as you would think. So if we look at some of this stuff, right? I have great platforms like LandSpeed that I am using, but there's a cost to that, right? I pay for marketing. Right now, that marketing cost is about $3,000 to $4,000 a month. We put a lot of money in marketing. Anytime we get new sales, I have salespeople that are working for me. I have to pay them when new sales comes through. There's another $1,000 a month. I might have late payments, people that are late, maybe $2,000 a month. I have people paying off notes that, and people defaulting. So some of that income goes up and goes down. There's $1,000 a month. And then of course we got to buy land too, right? So if I'm buying it myself, I targeted, that's about 15 grand a month in new land purchases. And if that's that 10 new a month, that 1,500 a month, if you bump that up 1,000 a month or 1,000 per property, now you're talking 25,000 a month. So it's very easy to see how if you're self-funding everything, that all that money, 28,000 a month, goes pretty darn quick when you look at all those expenses that happen in the business. Now, certainly I can stop buying new properties, right? And I could just collect, which I do. Which I do. I know some people say mail all the time. Okay. And I think it depends on kind of where you're at. Right now, I have an inventory of like 25 properties. And so I feel pretty good about where we're at. We've been selling about 20 properties a month, but I still have defaults happening every month. So inventory now naturally refreshes by 4 or 5 properties a month on defaults and returns and stuff like that. So I figure if I get to about 35,000 a month, I can self-fund everything and come home with a profit, of about $10,000 a month with people running the business for me, sales, intake managers.
Hey, I just want to mention our sponsor, LandSpeed.
Hey folks, my name is David Van Steenkist, and I've been a real estate investor for over 10 years. I've used lots of different tools, but none of them has done for my business what LandSpeed does. LandSpeed covers every step in the land investing process, from ordering mailing lists to marketing, sales, and closing the deal. What I really like, though, is it anticipates my needs. When I think, I wish I had a quick and easy way to evaluate return on investment on a potential property, look no further, LandSpeed does it. If I want to edit a deed after LandSpeed creates it, it can do that too. Most systems just stick you with a PDF that's uneditable, and you got to go back into the system and edit the fields and do whatever you need to do, and it's a real pain in the rear end. LandSpeed simplifies it. If I want to send 1 or 5 or even 40 neighbor letters at the click of a button, bam, LandSpeed does it. But even with all that inherent capability, you get access to LandSpeed Community, you get weekly mastermind calls, and you get the best mailing rates in the business with no volume commitment, which is freaking awesome. Because if I just want to pop one contract to somebody, I don't have to pay $1.50. I still pay the bargain basement rate. And on top of that, customer service is stellar, quick, and they just do a great job. I've been very, very happy, very pleased with it. And look, I've been running my business on LandSpeed for over 2 years. So take it from me. If you're serious about your land business, then check out LandSpeed at facebook.com/landbizautomation. That's land, B-I-Z automation. And if you want $100 off, tell them you heard it from me, David Van Steenkist, on the Land.MBA podcast.
All right. So Mike, the one thing that I find in my business that just drives me, I hate it so much, is that you look at your top line revenue, and then I use the profit first method. So, I lop off my profit first, that goes into a bucket. My second bucket is taxes. By the time taxes is out, that number's not looking so big. I don't care how big it was. It just isn't looking that big anymore between, whether it's, the FICA, the Medicare, and now if, you can do it either way. So like if you're an LLC, I always forget the name of it. It's not entrepreneur tax. What is it called? Self-employment tax.
Self-employment tax, yeah.
Or if you're structured as an S corp, you can do it as a salary, which potentially can limit it. But now you've got to pay both the personal side and the business side because you're both. Yeah. And so, you got to put this big chunk of money to the side for taxes every month from that income. And so, you start to say, $35,000. By the time you put the taxes away, it's already a heck of a lot less.
That's true.
So yeah, so the numbers are a little bit deceiving. The good news is, there are billions of acres in this country, and this country is just designed for this business, and only 6% of the land is actually built up. So there's a lot of vacant land out there. And the second thing is, and this is where I think we really should go in this conversation, is if you build it right, you can scale up to those numbers without killing yourself, because you can build an organization and processes so that your actual involvement is different. And so let me give a bit of a preamble to this question. So when Dave and I started Land.MBA, we had a real idea in our head. And in fact, Land.MBA wasn't the first name for the business. The first name for the business was Land 201. And the reason was because everybody out there is going after the newbie, right? So it's all about the 101 stuff. Let me show you, these are the steps of the business, and you have to mail in marketing. Good stuff, absolutely necessary. We cover it too. But where we get our energy from and where we wanted to go was a little bit more into the 201 topics. And when we say, okay, think big, I'm totally with you on that, right? And in fact, when we start, the first thing we do is we define coaching as, we need to figure out where you are and where you're going. And then we help you build a plan to bridge the gap. And then we help you execute the plan. That's what coaching is. And everybody's starting point and goal is different. And so that conversation is different, and therefore the plan is different for everybody, right? But a lot of people, just like you said, they come in and are like, well, I need to make this much money so I can quit my job. I'm like, okay, that's a near-term milestone. That's not a goal, right? What's on your epitaph? I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but what's on your epitaph? What do you want to achieve in your life? Let's figure out the big, hairy, audacious goal that stimulates you emotionally and makes you committed to this. Then let's back it up into a 1-year milestone, convert that into a free cash flow number, and build a plan around it. But we can't do that until we understand the big goals. So that's think big. Then start small, which of course is, all right, how do you get into this business? What's the operational model? What are the tools that you use? How do you start the mailing, the marketing, and all that? Where we found everything else stops is right there, right? Okay, I thought big, I started small. I have absolutely no idea how to get my small business to achieve my goal. And the difference that we feel is that it's the difference between having an operational mindset and a CEO mindset. If you have an operational mindset, growth is always incremental from the base. But when you have a CEO mindset, you're starting with the goal and you're saying, okay, this is what I have to work with. Now I need a different kind of a plan, because operationally I'm sound, but I may need to completely reinvent that operational model, because this is my goal. It takes a little bit more creativity, a little more drive, and a lot more of leveraging other people and resources. And so clearly, one, you've got a CEO mindset. You've already expressed that in this call, and you're already doing this. And so I really want to delve into that more, as how you came in, and we all start at the same place. It all starts operationally. How did you make that transition from an operational mindset to the CEO mindset and change your business accordingly?
Yeah, well, I'd say one of the mentors in the business has asked the question of, what do you hate right now? And so the goal has always been, if I hate something, get it off of my plate. So let's just start at the beginning of the journey. So I had no inventory, right? No properties. Well, I started out real small, just like you said, right? I had a big thought. Oh gosh, 10,000 in income would be great. Let's work towards that. And so I buy my first couple of properties and prove the business model, turn around and sell them. And it was those first couple of months, man, they're always like, is this really going to work? I don't really know. It sounds too good to be true. And you prove the model, right? So, okay, I sold a couple of properties. Great. What if I can do that some more? And so then you get into some of the, my first issue was Craigslist. And people said, oh, use Craigslist. That's a great way to sell land. And I started doing it myself, right? And I was like, I can't stand this stupid thing. So I hired people. I hired someone to write ads. I hired someone to place ads. And Craigslist did end up working out for me, even with kind of outsourcing it and trying to do it. Well, the business continues. We're selling some properties. I start figuring out as I go along in the journey, well, gosh, Facebook is working really well. I'm getting sales there. I'm getting sales on Lands.com and Land and Farm and those kinds of areas. And so it's taking a lot of my time. Facebook in particular, what can I do to replace myself so I don't have to spend all that time? Because I was getting worn out, 6 months of responding to messages at all times of the day. My wife would get super annoyed with me. She's like, what are you doing on your phone again? It's like, I'm just texting, got someone interested. And so there was that family tension, that grind period, right? Where you're doing everything yourself. And so I started with Facebook to saying, okay, what would it cost to hire someone out? And this guy that was doing Craigslist for me and I wasn't getting results from, but he was a good worker. I said, hey, what if we did this instead? And so I gave him access to my Facebook and I said, hey, if I'll pay you $249 a month, which would cover one sale for me, which I know I've been getting 3 or 4 myself. You just have to do a fraction of what I've been doing and it'll cover your cost. And then I'll give you another $100 per sale after that, which essentially puts me in the black.
So $249 base and $100 per property.
That's right. And this guy was international.
Yep.
And so he was doing it and we were working it and I wasn't having to spend the time on Facebook. Now, at the same time, I was having some of the pain points of due diligence. So I started hiring VAs to do some of the due diligence stuff and just basic due diligence, get me the Google Map screen, the Google Map links, the legal description, just really basic, easy stuff. That takes time. I like doing it actually, but it just takes time and I only have so much time. And so that was in the first 6 months to a year. I put some of those wheels in place. And then I kept going back and saying, what is working and what is not working, as I do an evaluation every 3 to 6 months in terms of everything. If I'm mailing to counties, what counties are responding? On the sales side, what counties are selling? And they just keep on going back and doing more of what works. So then eventually I had 2 people selling for Facebook for me. I had someone starting to manage about 1.5 years ago, all my leads from Lands.com and Land Flip and Land Century. So that's off my plate now. Then I start hiring a domestic intake manager to take over some more of the advanced due diligence. That was, so I've been doing land investing now 3 years. So this was about 1.5 years into the journey that I hired an intake manager. I hired a marketing manager even before that, just to help with placing some of the ads on Lands.com and those other places. Because again, all this stuff takes time. And in order to scale, I had to hire off some of this stuff. And so I just kept on hiring more and more and more people. So I have a lot of costs now today because I've hired all these people, but I'm saving myself the time. So my margins are certainly a lot lower than they could be, but hey, I get more scale this way, I could do more stuff.
Absolutely.
Right. And it depends on how you think of that margin, right? Because you've got time, now you're able to run the business like a CEO and grow it, and your time is your own. And it's hard to put a price on that so long as the business is performing at an acceptable margin. I have a question. With regards to your marketing manager, is that person domestic or is that more a poster, an international VA?
Yeah, Dan Kennedy once said something incredibly smart. Dan Kennedy passed away about 1 year ago. I highly recommend his books to anyone that loves to do marketing stuff or just wants to learn about it. He said, have a rule of 2. Have 2 people for every position. That way, if one's gone, you have a backup.
Right.
And that's true of softwares and all kinds of other things. I found that to be a great rule to have. So for example, on credit card processing, I have 2 credit card processors. So if I get kicked off by one of them, I can still process my credit card payments and stuff like that. Worst case scenario. It might be a big pain in the butt, but I could do it. I have 2 intake managers. I have 3 marketing managers. So my intake managers, I have them specializing by state.
Mm-hmm.
So one marketing manager specializes in Colorado and Oregon, does all the counties there, regardless of whatever. The other intake manager specializes in Arizona and New Mexico. And then with the intake managers, I found some of them can actually sell. And so one of them does selling for me. So, I've increased their hours based off their capabilities and whatever. And they cross over into my other businesses too. So.
Are you using Filipino VAs for that? Or are you using domestic?
All of the above. So
I'm sorry?
I have my intake managers are domestic.
Gotcha.
My marketing managers are domestic. They help to manage VAs that are international, that are doing some of the basic stuff.
Okay. So you've got managers in a leadership role that are doing the thinking roles, and they have their own VAs to offload the task-oriented, time-consuming stuff.
Yep.
Great.
So I just want to sort of take all the gems that you just gave us, and I want to kind of reduce it into the key lesson here, because that was brilliant, and a brilliant explanation of what a CEO approach to this business is like. And you're really doing 3 things that really define a CEO's job. One is you're keeping for yourself the responsibility for strategy. You're starting with the goals and working backwards to how to achieve them. The second thing you're doing is you are building an organization and managing the people to execute. So, what positions do I need, and then part of that is just simply organizational design. The other part is how do I make sure I'm getting the most out of those people? And the third thing that you're doing, and you said this really quickly, but I don't think we should just breeze over it, is you said every 3 months or so, you stop and you take a hard look at what's working and what's not. And so you're constantly figuring out how to eliminate things that are inefficient and not a good use of money and not achieving your goals. And then figuring out how to double down on the things that are, and figuring out if you've got any gaps that need to be filled. And those 3 things, in my opinion, really define the CEO mindset in the land business. It's brilliant. It's really, really great.
Well, I just want to emphasize, and I know you guys talk about this, is you have to master it yourself first, right? You can't hand off a task to somebody without you being able to train them on it. Like, you can't just start hiring people from day one when you haven't done it. You have to do it yourself first.
Totally agree. I'm actually so anal about it that, you say when I absolutely can't stand doing this anymore, then I know I've got to outsource it. But at that point, I usually continue on for a few more months, because it's at that point that I feel so compelled to work out every last bit of inefficiency and figure out every last bit that I can automate in that process before I pass it down. Because when I pass it to somebody else, I really want it to come down to, these are the 5 steps in order, and it should take you this much time.
Yeah. And sometimes, sometimes you can go overboard on that, and the process it's good enough to hand off. Sometimes you can just keep whittling it down to a point where, you don't need to.
Right.
That's a judgment call too, right?
Because what I just described is frankly an operational mindset.
Yeah.
Eventually, the way Dave's doing it is, now you've got managers that are operating, you say, in the States, that are managing VAs overseas. And so when you hire higher capability people, they probably can figure out ways to do things that you've never even considered.
Right.
You're not leveraging.
Yeah, they'll do it better than you at some point. I guess it kind of comes back to what's the how does Tim Ferriss term it in the 4-Hour Work Week? Eliminate, automate, delegate. So get that process to a point where you've eliminated as much of the unnecessary steps as possible before you delegate and automate. But there's a point too, right? It's never perfect. It's kind of usually a work in progress.
Is it just me, or is it getting harder and harder to count on a job for our financial security? Who would have ever believed that we would go from the lowest unemployment in 50 years to 40 million people unemployed? Whether you have a great job and want to create a second income, or you're recently unemployed, you need to check out Land.MBA, your one-stop shop for land investors. Investing in vacant land is a proven business model that can help you build a reliable and scalable second income. Imagine a business where you love what you do. There's no limit on how much money you can make. You can operate your business from anywhere in the world with an internet connection. And best of all, you can never be fired or downsized. If this sounds good to you, Land.MBA provides everything you need to get your business up and running and delivering income quickly. You get education, an end-to-end video course and optional coaching to help you get started faster and turn your energy into income. You get tools so you can automate and outsource the busy work and stay super organized. You get access to a thriving community of like-minded investors, which is a powerful way to share best practices and develop potential partnerships for growing your business. And finally, you get access to deal financing, so you never have to pass on a great investment opportunity due to limited funds. Our team has over a decade of real estate investing experience and has the knowledge and experience you need to help navigate any investing scenario. And with Land.MBA, we hold nothing back. Because there are no upsells, you get access to all of our combined knowledge right out of the gate. So don't wait to provide your family with financial freedom. Sign up today for Land.MBA's Soup to Nuts Land Investing video course. Just go to courses.land.mba and use coupon code FREEDOM to get 25% off. That's courses.land.mba and coupon code FREEDOM. And let us help you say goodbye to your job and hello to financial freedom.
Right. Well, I just want to emphasize that this business is not hands off. I meet with each one of those managers 1 hour a week.
Yeah.
We don't meet daily, but we meet 1 hour a week for me to check in with each of them. And basically I have 5, so I'm meeting with someone every single day. So actually, as a matter of fact, when we're done with this call in about an hour, then I have an intake and marketing manager meeting where we're talking about, hey, how are things going for the week? I have them come up with an agenda. Where are we stuck right now? And I'm helping to coach them and guide them and give them thoughts, or they're coming back to me with feedback. Hey, we can improve on this, or what do you think about that, and stuff like that. So constantly meeting with your VAs on a regular basis, I think, is so important, particularly when you hire the managers.
Do you ever get in that feeling like, I just can't do this anymore. I have to hire it out, but I just don't have time to go find somebody and write up a job description and train them. I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to suffer and do it myself.
I've been there many times, and right now my biggest struggle is bookkeeping. I have this great problem of all this money coming in and all these people paying me, but it's a huge pain in the butt to go and like Stripe will have 20 transactions and 1 deposit. So then you have to go and unbundle all this stuff. And it's like, oh God, I hate this. And then I've hired bookkeepers and they can't keep up. They can't keep up with me. And so that's my biggest pain point right now, is the bookkeeping side of things, because there's a lot of transactions happening on a daily basis.
Yeah. Have you thought about hiring a bookkeeping VA that just works for you?
That's I'm going with that rule of 2, right? So
yeah.
I've hired 2, and just in the last month, and I'm training them myself just to see how they're going. Because now for bookkeeping, if I do it domestic, most companies want to charge $700 to $1,000 a month with all the transactions I got going on. So international is a better way to go, but it takes training. Training.
Yeah, very cool. Do you set up any kind of like competition between your intake managers to try to drive them?
I think there's it's not spoken outright, but I think that there's a little bit of competitiveness going on. I'd say particularly on the sales side. So, because the managers the salespeople get the emails every time there's a sale. So they know when any of us gets a sale. So it's unspoken. This person just got like 10 sales this month.
Yeah.
You got 2. It's like, crap, I got to do better, And I even find myself too. It's like, oh, I got to get more sales so I can keep up with them. So, I feel that little bit of a competitive drive myself. I can't let them outshine me too badly. I got to get in there.
I love a little gamification. Hey, we're going to do a bonus this month for the person who achieves X,
Yes.
Dave, just a quick question going backwards a little bit on that. I mean, you got a nice note portfolio. What's the kind of the price points that's your sweet spot that you like to play in as far as on the acquisition side?
Well, it's changed over time. So initially, as with many of us, right, we started out doing cheaper stuff. So a lot of my note portfolio to start out was $249 down, $99 a month kind of things.
Okay.
And now where I'm at today is the way I look at the business in this name of thinking big is there is that business, which I still do. Although maybe we do 500 down and 150 a month or something like that.
Right.
But that's a kind of property. That's part of my portfolio. So we do those. But we also go up a level to now we're looking for 500 down and 249 a month on more expensive properties where it's not a $4,000 terms price or $5,000 terms price. Now it's a $10,000 terms price.
Where you're paying maybe 2 to 4?
It depends. I might be paying 4 to 5 on some of them. Which still to me, I mean, heck, 100% rate of return, plus interest on a lot of those things. I mean, I'll do that all day. That's
right.
Especially if I know it's an area I sell. And then I start exploring new areas and I'm moving up in price. And frankly, that's been a big source of frustration for me where I'm sending out more mail to try and acquire properties. And in some cases, whole mailers just fail.
Yeah.
Right. And I know the pricing's right. I know it is. And we get those hate calls. So I'm getting hate calls. I know it's doing well. But some of those we do terms. Some of them we do cash. And I've done more terms than cash, even on those higher ones, where now people are putting $5,000 down or $10,000 down. And we bought it for 20, 10, 15, 20, $30,000. So we've done some of those, which often I partner with other folks on those guys. I've taken out lines of credit in order to fund some of the big ones. And we do those terms and they might be $400 a month on some of those or $500 a month. I think my biggest one that someone's doing right now is like $800 a month. But that's more the exception than the rule.
Right.
So those are all different kinds of properties. And in my portfolio, I want to have those smaller ones because they're basic bread and butter. We know how to do those. We know how to mail them. We know how to acquire them. And as I'm working my way up, it's a struggle to get those higher priced ones and know where to go. And it seems so much more art than science on some of them.
It is. Somebody made a comment on the Land Speed Smart Bar last night. She said, sometimes I think it's, it just comes down to timing and luck occasionally. And there's definitely something to be said for that, for sure. I mean, I've experienced the same thing because I have the same philosophy on my business model. I like to kind of spread the wealth, as you might say, and have a diversity of properties in the funnel. And because the inexpensive stuff is a good bread and butter, and then but as you start to step up in value, you get less deals per mailer on average. People are just more aware of their property. They're a little more attached to it typically. And, but it also requires less deals to make a nice chunk of money,
But it's classic portfolio management. If you put all your eggs into one strategy and something changes in the economy and that strategy stops working, you got to reinvent yourself, and there's going to be this gap before you can move. So if you've got, I'm doing some cheap properties, I'm doing some infill lots, I'm doing some larger properties, pretty much no matter what happens, it's sort of like having two intake managers. You'll have something to fall back on.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And I really like your intake manager strategy, because you could not only specialize per state. If you wanted to, you could also specialize in various asset classes too. Like, okay, infill lots is definitely a specialty. So if that was you could have somebody that specialized in infill lots. That's interesting.
So Dave, we're coming to the end of our time here, but there's two final questions I want to ask you. So you've been in this 3 years, you've had great success. I mean, you're at 200 plus notes. You've got a machine that's turning the crank for you every month. If you could go back and talk to yourself 3 years ago when you were first starting out, before you made some mistakes, what advice would you give yourself?
Man, it's always such a good question, because how much do you learn on that journey that in some ways you have to make those mistakes in order to get to where you are now. If maybe I didn't make those mistakes, right? It's like Back to the Future kind of thing. It's like Biff takes over the world when you go back and try and stop a mistake from happening. I think in terms of what I would advise someone new that's starting out is just like you guys say, start small. Don't think too big. Some of the lessons we talked about, master the process first. I would get into smaller stuff. I know Dave Van Steenkist has had great luck in partnering with like people that have tax liens. For me, that's actually a big part of my business that I'm doing is doing tax liens, because I want to be that other part, wholesaling part of my business. And so I'd encourage people to look into stuff like that, tax deeds, tax liens, because you can pick up properties and you know what you're buying them for, in addition to mailing. So I'd encourage people to explore both of those things as they get familiar with their counties, and know your counties well. I think the cheap stuff is a great way to start out. Terms business is a great way to start out, for your first 20 transactions, I think, in my opinion. Just keep that rule of 2 that I mentioned in mind. Have a backup for everything. I can't even tell you, the number of VAs I've gone through. Some have stuck around, some have moved on, some I've let go. When you go to hire people, hire 2 at the same time. See who's doing better. If both are great, then find a place for them. Maybe you make less money, but find a place for both if you have talent and you can find talent. And that'll allow you to scale and grow. And don't be afraid to experiment and fall flat on your face after you've established a base.
Yeah.
And don't leave your day job too early. Keep it, get to the point where you're making so much money that you're losing money every month by having your day job.
Yeah, your day job's costing you money.
Brilliant. Okay, last question. We have a fair amount of people who listen to this podcast who have not yet taken the jump into the land business. And for them, I mean, they've heard your story now, but just succinctly say, why do you think that a person should, who's got the day job, obviously has some interest in whether it's a side hustle or moving into a different kind of a career, maybe get a little bit more entrepreneurial, why should they take the jump into the land business?
Well, let me just say, I think the land business isn't for everybody. It requires a certain set of skills, and or you have to partner with someone who has skills that you don't. So I think you really have to dig into it and try it. If you don't try it, you're not going to know, first of all. And I've done that with various things. One of the things I didn't mention is we made an acquisition of a software business that does mobile gaming kits. I experimented. We tried something. And that's not the direction I wanted to go. Land ended up doing so much better for me. I think people that do well in this business that have a day job, they're numbers oriented. They're good with spreadsheets. They're good with analytics, but they're also good with people to a degree. So that weird mix of those things is what often makes for a good person. Maybe someone's owned a business. Maybe they've done wholesaling like Dave did. Maybe they've done online businesses in the past, an Amazon FBA business or something like that. Or something like myself, where they've been in finance. I think a lot of those people do well. And of course, people do well from all kinds of
right brain mix, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have Philip Davis, who's a good friend of mine. You guys had him on the other day. He's a nurse, but he's number oriented enough to do this business, and he's good with people. So people can come from all kinds of walks of life to do this. But I think the people who don't do well, often it's life events. They're just not honest with themselves about dedication to the hustle and the grind, because it is a grind. Let's make no mistake about it. For me, I consider this a hobby as much as a business, because I like to do it. It's kind of fun. But again, you're not going to know unless you do it. So take the dive, give it a try, and you might fail, and that's okay. And if you're dedicated towards it, you just keep doing it until you find success. So
I love it. A hobby that generates $35,000 a month. That everybody needs that kind of a hobby.
They do.
Dave, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. This was a fantastic, chock full of real great nuggets. And we're really thrilled with the success that you're having, and we look forward to working with you for many years to come. So thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Have an awesome day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about Land.MBA, visit our website at, wait for it, Land.MBA. See you next time on the Land.MBA podcast.